The huge protests in the Russian Far East in support of Sergei Furgal continue to dominate the Russian papers. Today, President Putin sacked Mr. Furgal as Khabarovsk governor. He's under arrest in Moscow, charged with links to contract killings. Today's Novaya Gazeta says this about the protests. Khabarovsk not only dispels the myth about the might and the clout of Russian propaganda, on which billions of state money are spent, but also the lie put out by the security structures that a peaceful civic activity on the streets is mass unrest. The week of protests has passed with no arrests, vandalism or damage to property. Not a single shop window has been smashed during the Khabarovsk protests. Events in Khabarovsk are developing according to the classic crisis of representation. People acutely feel that their interests are not being protected by anyone, and that after the arrest of the elected governor, they can only rely on themselves. The contemptuous silence of the state media, including local channels, only deepens this feeling that people are not represented by the authorities. It's hard to say why the Kremlin believed it was okay to ignore citizens for years and build a functioning political system out of this. It's clear the machine has begun to break. Nezavisomaya Gazeta. The Khabarovsk protests are heating up the Far East. Discontent with Moscow has begun spilling over into other Russian regions. For example, at the end of last week, unauthorized protests in Vladivostok and Birobidzhan were clearly timed to coincide with the Khabarovsk protests. Even the pro-Kremlin Komsomolskaya Pravda says this: we need to accept the protests in Khabarovsk for what it is. This is not a whim. It's not hysteria. Khabarovsk is strong-willed, angry and coherent. It's an historic turning point, as if the city suddenly looks at itself differently, with respect and with the calm determination to create a new life. Although right now, it's not clear what new life. That's quite a contrast with the reporting on pro-Kremlin state TV, which, for example, hasn't showed the scale of the protests. Novaya Versia quotes journalist Maxim Shevchenko saying this: Furgal's arrest looks not like an act of justice, but a reprisal against a politically undesirable opposition leader of a protest region. In Moscow, they don't know or understand the mentality of people in Khabarovsk and the Russian Far East. People are insulted, and they're not about to forget this insult. The result? In a strategically important area near the Chinese border, there is now a politically unstable, rebellious region. The government paper doesn't mention the protests. It concentrates on Sergei Furgal's alleged crimes. The headline, Business Through Murder. The paper claims that in 2019, new evidence helped investigators come to a definitive conclusion about Furgal's involvement in organising murders. This is, in effect, trial by newspaper.